Imagine, the year is 1492. Europe is restless, standing at the edge of change. The printing press has already begun to reshape how ideas travel. Gunpowder is redefining warfare. Kingdoms like Spain and Portugal are hungry for trade routes, wealth, and power. And at this very moment, one ambitious navigator named Christopher Columbus sails westward, convinced he can reach Asia. But now, pause history. What if those sails never reached the Caribbean? What if Columbus never set foot in the Americas? Would the New World remain hidden from Europe for centuries? Would indigenous civilizations like the Aztecs, Maya, and Inca continue to thrive? And how would the balance of global power shift without the Columbian Exchange? Today, on Renaissance Reframed, we're going to unravel one of the biggest what-ifs in history. What if Christopher Columbus never reached the Americas? Before we can imagine the alternate timeline, we need to remember the world Columbus lived in. By the late 15th century, Europe was desperate for trade routes to Asia. Spices, silk, and precious goods flowed east to west. But the overland Silk Road was expensive and dangerous. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 had closed off many traditional routes, and Muslim empires controlled the gateways to Asia. Portugal had already begun exploring the African coast, inching toward the Indian Ocean. Spain, recently united under Ferdinand and Isabella after centuries of Reconquista, wanted its own route. Columbus convinced them that Asia could be reached by sailing west. But in our alternate timeline, let's say Columbus fails. Maybe his ships sink in the Atlantic. Maybe Isabella refuses his funding. Or perhaps Columbus returns empty-handed, never stumbling upon the Caribbean islands. At first, this might not seem world-changing. After all, surely someone else would have discovered the Americas, right? But timing is everything in history. And missing 1492 would have rewritten the trajectory of global power. So what happens to the Americas if Columbus never arrives? The Aztec Empire in Mesoamerica was at its height of power, dominating central Mexico. The Inca ruled a vast, sophisticated empire across the Andes. Countless other cultures thrived, from the Mississippian mound builders in North America to the Taino of the Caribbean. Without European diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza, these civilizations would have continued to grow. Remember, in real history, disease wiped out up to 90% of the native population within decades of contact. Without that catastrophe, indigenous societies could have resisted foreign powers for far longer, or perhaps even developed maritime expansion of their own. Could we have seen an Incan empire extending northward? An Aztec navy exploring the Pacific? These possibilities, while speculative, remind us of how sudden and devastating European arrival truly was. Now, let's turn back to Europe. Spain's empire was built on the gold, silver, and resources of the New World. Without the Americas, Spain might never have become the global superpower of the 16th century. The vast influx of silver from Potosi in present-day Bolivia funded Spain's armies, its wars, and its dominance across Europe. Without it, Spain could have remained a second-rate power compared to Portugal, France, or even the Ottoman Empire. Portugal, meanwhile, might have doubled down on its African and Asian trade networks. Lisbon could have remained the richest city in Europe, controlling spice routes and dominating Indian Ocean commerce. And what about England and France? In real history, they followed Spain and Portugal across the Atlantic. But in this alternate reality, they may have invested more heavily in Africa, Asia, and even Arctic exploration. Perhaps we would see a British India centuries earlier, or a French foothold in Africa that overshadowed their later American colonies. One of the most profound consequences of Columbus's voyage was a Columbian exchange, the transfer of plants, animals, diseases, and ideas between the old world and the new. Think about it. Without Columbus, Europe never gains potatoes, maize, or tomatoes. Imagine Italy without the tomato, no pasta with red sauce, no pizza as we know it. Imagine Ireland without the potato, which fueled its population boom. Coffee and sugar plantations in the Caribbean never rise, and the transatlantic slave trade, one of the darkest chapters of history, may not have unfolded in the same way. Conversely, horses, wheat, and cattle may never reach the Americas. Native societies would remain without those transformative animals and crops. The entire world's diet, economy, and demography would look alien compared to what we know today. By the 1600s, in our real timeline, Europe was already reshaping the world. But without Columbus opening the door, Asia and Africa might have remained the true centers of global wealth for much longer. The Ottoman Empire, Safavid Persia, and Mughal India controlled vast territories and resources. Ming China had the world's most advanced economy. Without American silver flooding into Europe, China's economy may have remained the dominant global force. In this timeline, Europe may never experience the same burst of wealth that fueled the Renaissance, the scientific revolution, and the Age of Enlightenment. Without the Americas, perhaps industrialization would have been delayed by centuries, or maybe it would have emerged in China or India first. Now comes the big question. Would the Americas have eventually been discovered anyway? The answer is almost certainly yes. By the 16th century, shipbuilding and navigation were improving rapidly. Fishermen from Europe were already sailing far into the Atlantic. Norse explorers had reached Newfoundland centuries earlier. Eventually, curiosity, trade, or even accidents would have led Europeans to the New World. But if discovery came 50 or 100 years later, the world would have looked very different. By then, indigenous empires might have been stronger, Europe's power struggles more advanced, and Asia even more dominant. The age of exploration, as we know it, may have been shaped by different players entirely. So, what's the ultimate takeaway? If Columbus had never reached the Americas, history wouldn't just shift slightly. It would transform at its core. Spain may never have risen as a world power. The Columbian Exchange may never have reshaped diets and populations. Indigenous civilizations might have endured far longer, and perhaps even entered the global stage on their own terms. Instead of a Europe-centered world order, we may have seen a more balanced one, where Asia, Africa, and the Americas each maintain stronger, independent roles. History reminds us how fragile turning points really are. One voyage, one set of sails in 1492 rewrote the fate of continents. But without it, the world would look utterly unrecognizable. So the next time you think of Columbus, not as a discoverer of America, but as the trigger of a chain reaction, remember how contingent history truly is. One man's voyage forever reshaped the world. And without it, the map of history would be entirely different. This has been Renaissance Reframed. If you enjoyed this journey into alternate history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And let us know in the comments. In your opinion, would the Americas have eventually risen as global powers without Columbus? Or would Europe have still found a way to dominate? Because sometimes, the biggest questions in history are not about what happened, but about what could have happened